Okay, so now that you've looked at the idea of the color wheel, get a little idea of how it works, let's take a look at how Photoshop deals with color. So a very useful tool here is something called the eyedropper tool. Now let me show you how this works. I have downloaded a picture of a painting by Henri Matisse, French painter. I like it because it's got lots of different colors in it. And let me show you how the eyedropper tool works. With the eyedropper tool, you can click on any color and notice how it changes right here in the little palette, the foreground color. So if I click on the blue, it turns blue. If I click on this gray color, yellow, notice that each time I click, the color changes over here. That means that once we have this color selected, we can paint with it or create colors using that particular color. So let's say, for example, I've selected the yellow here. If I click on the actual foreground color here, I'm going to get the color picker window. This is going to give us all sorts of interesting information about the color. Now, notice that yellow, there are lots of possible shades of yellow, right? It can get lighter and lighter and lighter, or it can get darker and darker and darker. But what this color picker is showing us is this exact shade of yellow. And it's giving us some very important information here. For example, it has the hue, saturation, and brightness of the particular color of yellow, right? That's basically the degree of yellow that is yellow. But the ones we're really interested in here are the RGB. That stands for red, green, and blue. Now, unlike the color wheel that's used for painting, right, for oil paints, acrylics, and so forth, computer monitors use just light. And all the colors that you see in a computer monitor are made up of these three colors, red, green, and blue. And so this is showing us the amount of each, right, where 255 is the most. It goes down to 0. And this gives you the actual amount of the color. Now, it also gives you this little number here. This is what's called this is a little technical, but it's the hexadecimal number for this particular shade of yellow. This is useful information if you want to digitally convey this particular color. Let's say, for example, you're designing a website. You want to use this shade of yellow. By using this color code, this hexadecimal code, you can make the page that exact same color. But keep in mind that this color of yellow is made up of these parts of red, green, and blue, right? And if you were to change these numbers, you would change the actual yellow. Actually, watch this. Watch as I move. If I move along here and make it lighter, notice that the degrees of red, green, and blue are changing, right? In fact, if I get all the way to white, it goes to 255, 255, 255. That's the color white. If I go all the way to black, it's going to be 0, 0, 0. So there's 0 red, 0 green, 0 blue. But we're looking for something that's more up in here. Now, of course, it's impossible for me to find that exact shade of yellow unless I memorize these three numbers, but I can just use the eyedropper tool again and just click on that yellow and then click here, and there I have it again. This is the exact percentage of that color, okay? Super useful information. And so what we can do now with this information is we'll create a palette of colors based on this original painting, okay? So here's what I'm going to do for this. I am going to create a palette, and I already started one here, and I just started making little rectangles and filling them with the color. Let me show you how I did that. Is I just simply created a rectangle, and then I'll go back to the original Matisse work, use the eyedropper tool, and I will select one of the colors, say for example this shade of green. And then what I'll do is since I've got that selected and it's in my foreground color here, I can now go back to my palette and I can use the paint bucket tool right here, and there we go. Now I have that shade of green. Now I could keep going with this because there's also a little bit of gray here and so forth, but I've got the basic colors that are here and set to go. Now, so now I have two basic files here. My original painting that I found, and then my palette. Now, the last step is to create a new file, and we're going to create our own original composition using this color palette. That's the idea. Using these 5 colors, I'm going to paint something using Photoshop, or you fill in shapes using just those colors. So I will create a new blank file, and I will go into my palette. I will use my eyedropper, and I'll start maybe with this orange. And I've selected, you can see it's there. I'll go here to my blank canvas, and I'll use a brush. And then I will figure out what size do I want it to be. And I can change the hardness. I could pick different brushes and so forth. But I'm just going to do something. I'll just put a few lines here. I'm not trying to do anything too fancy. Just experimenting a little bit. And then I'll go back to the palette. I'll use the eyedropper tool again. Eyedropper. Pick the next color that I want to use. Go back here and then go to my brush tool. And now I'll add some yellow in here, right? And just put some in here. Just experimenting. And then I will continue along these lines until I fill up the entire canvas. All right, so I continue filling up the canvas. And now you can see that I have 3 files, right? I've got my original piece of artwork, I've got my palette, and I've got my doodle. I somehow think the Matisse is worth a lot more money than this quick little creation. But I did this in just 2 minutes. So you get the idea of how much fun you can have by taking a palette that's been created by a famous artist, making your own palette, and then using that palette to create your own creation. That is the idea of this project. And then when you present it, you can lay them out side by side, and we'll have a lot of fun being able to take a look at your 3 images together.